You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another wonderful edition of Global Trade This Week. I am Pete Mento, and with me, almost as always, but never quite enough, is my good friend Doug Draper. And with him is, are we going to call this the AI version of Troy, Doug?
Yeah, we could. It's more of a paper version. Troy's a little old school like that, but
2D,
yeah.
2D,
What?
the
Yeah.
2D, two-dimensional.
The 2D.
Two-dimensional Troy.
2D.
I'm coming to you on location in beautiful Whippany, New Jersey. For those of you who don't know where Whippany is, neither do I. I followed the navigation on my phone to get here. I'm speaking at the PCSC, which is part of the HDA. This is a pharmaceutical supply chain security conference. I'll be talking a lot about economics and the state of economics tomorrow. Doug, I think you're finally back. We've had a bunch of weeks where you weren't with us. You were in California. So are you back in Denver?
I am back in Denver. And the funny thing, Pete, is that I was in Fresno and you're in Whippany, New Jersey. So we go to top notch.
Yeah, buddy.
We're like top shelf liquor. There's no downtown Hyatt, no downtown Chicago Hyatt for you and I.
Well, it's like when people say, wow, you travel for work. It's so glamorous. And it's the one time I tell people, I was in Paris or I was in London for work. It's not like when you say I was in Bentonville, like, no, nothing wrong with Arkansas, or like I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There's a lot wrong with Tulsa, Oklahoma. Or, the 2 weeks in a row I spend in Gary, Indiana, or wherever, auditing somebody in a windowless conference room. It's not so much the city. It's just the fact that usually I'm kind of like hidden away in some dark space in a warehouse with 500 pages of customs entries, just basically looking down with a laptop. There's nothing glamorous about the travel that we usually do, buddy. So.
Yeah. I will give a shout out to Fresno. So if anybody's listening and they're all pissed about Fresno is growing on me, it's really close to a lot of cool stuff that I like to do. So Fresno's not all that bad, and it's made a lot of news lately with all the water, snowpack, and everything else. So all right, I'll give a shout out to Fresno. Not as bad as I had perceived it to be when I started my new job. So Fresno, you're all right in my book.
I usually find, Doug, I just need one good place to eat. I need a good coffee place, and if my hotel is clean, I'm all right.
Yeah,
that's about it. Yeah.
Downtown Clovis is where I'm staying, and there's this coffee joint, and I walked in there 6 a.m. because that's when they opened, and it's like the needle scratched against the record because I was obviously from out of town. Everybody there was local, and they just kind of turned around. I just sat at the counter, ate my food quickly, and left. But great place. Great. I forget the name of it.
You're like the nicest guy. How could anybody not want you to be at their coffee place? Like I would be.
Yeah. Well, I went in looking something like this. Collared shirts don't exist in that place. It's all farmers and boots. And so, who's this cop? What's this guy doing here?
Doug, you're a country boy. Come on, they just got to get to know you.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so I kicked off. So you're going to receive, and we've got some pretty good topics this week. So you go ahead and get it started, buddy.
Awesome, thanks. So last week we talked about cars and the state of the economy related to cars. So I'm going to keep that theme going this week, Pete, and talk about the EV tax credit rules that are going to be changing middle of this month. I think it's like the 18th or 17th of April, and it's all related to the Inflation Reduction Act back in 2022. And we've spoken about this as well. I can't remember how many shows ago, but it's basically the tax credits for electric vehicles are going to go away unless the car manufacturer is sourcing critical minerals and battery components from the U.S. or U.S. allies rather than China. And that basically means in this day and age and right here and now, very few electric vehicles will remain eligible because the vast majority of them are sourced with critical minerals from China. The other piece is that, I think I get this right, is that any car that's over $55,000 in value or resale is exempt anyway, regardless of where things are sourced. There's no tax credit. So the key thing here is, in my opinion, the word allies, right? And we spoke about this, and the U.S. does not have a whole lot of critical minerals around, Pete. So we better create a whole lot of friends. Uncle Sam maybe needs to get out there and create some alliances that are defined as allies, and find out where all the cool kids are hanging out. And the cool kids mean what countries have these critical minerals. So here's a couple of deals. So if you or our audience hears of trade agreements that all of a sudden pop up with countries that you may not have even heard of or didn't realize that we cared a whole lot about, you will shortly. So critical materials, graphite. Here's where that stuff is sourced: Mozambique, Tanzania, and Madagascar, right? You need some graphite and graphite flakes to make these batteries, right? So look for some trade agreements there. Cobalt, the Democratic Republic of Congo is the world leader in mining cobalt. Not 100% sure what cobalt does for batteries, but it's important. Lithium, everybody knows lithium batteries. Australia, Chile, Argentina are all companies. Here's the kicker on this one, Pete, is that there's 4 companies in the world that control 60% of the global production of lithium. And shocker, a couple of those are primarily owned by Chinese businesses. And then finally, nickel's a big one. Indonesia is the largest producer right after China. So there's going to be a change in the consumer buying habit with the credits going away at the middle of this month. But more importantly, specific to our show and the title of our show, which is Global Trade, so I think you're going to see a lot of agreements come into play with African countries and positioning themselves. So when these big automakers, when the big three start rolling in and start putting pressure on politicians to create favorable trade agreements, you're going to hear those countries quite a bit in the future. So it'll be interesting to see how all that shakes out.
Got a lot to say on this one, bud. So, first and foremost, a lot is being said about cobalt because of old friend of mine, Mr. Joe Rogan, the greatest podcaster on planet Earth, apparently, had someone on recently who had written a book. I think it's called Blood Cobalt or Red Cobalt or something to that effect, discussing the abhorrent conditions in Africa and the Republic of Congo where cobalt is mined. Just how terrible, just absolutely terrible it is. And the slavery conditions, the forced labor conditions that these people unfortunately are forced to live under in order to mine cobalt, and the ethical questions about the continued mining of cobalt in the People's Republic of Congo. So a lot of eyeballs are on that currently. Where else can we find cobalt? Right here in America, Idaho, as a matter of fact, there are cobalt deposits. They're just not very big. And then beyond that, getting to cobalt right now in places where we know that it exists is actually difficult to do because we haven't been mining in those deposits in ways that could be safe, and we haven't really gotten to that level where they are. Some of those other things that you've talked about, Chile, as an example, the United States is on the precipice of a free trade agreement with Chile, working hard at that. Canada has a lot of these minerals. The United States has tons of them, but our environmental policies get in the way of us getting to many of these minerals. We mine for a lot of them, but are unable to retain them because of our mining standards. We actually allow them to wash away, or we don't retain them because of the heavy metals requirements of our mining. You talk about Africa, much of the Belt and Road Initiative is focused on getting to these minerals. So China's already built the infrastructure to get to them. It's a really big question of how we're going to deal with this in the EV world. And because of policies that are mostly focused on green alternative energy, we're not even thinking about what we're going to do in the interim. So allowing Americans to manage that interim in between using petroleum, of using the more standard gasoline diesel engines in the meantime. It's being curbed to the side as we begin to focus on adopting EVs. So this is a big problem, Doug. It's a very big problem. And when we try to use taxes to get to it, I love this particular very recent issue. In Los Angeles, if you had a home that was worth $5 million to $9.99 million, there was an excise. There was a tax that was going to have to be paid, a transfer tax, if you sold it after April 1st. And I believe it was an additional 3% if you sold it after April 1st. And then for 10 million, it was another 5.5% and above. So people were just trying to sell these houses, and all these celebrities were trying to just get rid of these houses. And it's similar to these EVs where people were trying to sell them as quickly as they could in order to get that tax credit. People were trying to buy them and sell them, and it was playing havoc with the cost of these EVs all over the country. So it's the same thing there, where people realize what's going on. So they're waiting. They're waiting for this to happen in order to clear inventory and to sell new ones. And it's like anything else, capitalism is going to deal with this market more than trying to be altruistic. And I don't think we should be surprised by that, Doug.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. You bring up a good point about harvesting or mining, right? It's all fine and dandy to get a trade agreement with Congo, but then you run into the conditions of the mines and probably shocking to some individuals and how things are still operating out there.
It's scary.
So that's an excellent point that I didn't touch on.
Yeah. I think, anybody people would be shocked to just take a minute and go on Google and look at photographs of people in the turn of the 1900s all the way through the 1950s of black and white pictures of Americans and British people and people from the UK, English, Welsh, Scottish, Irish coal miners, Hungarian coal miners, and then look at pictures of people who are mining now. Honestly, the pictures aren't that different, Doug. And the problems that people in West Virginia, people in Kentucky have of being in these very dangerous, scary, concerning places with regards to health, they've really not that changed. The dangers are all still there. It's a miserable way to make a living. And those mining conditions really haven't changed. They're just as dangerous. The technology has gotten better, but really it's a miserable, dangerous way to make a living, no matter where you are in the world.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I think we should keep that in mind.
Yeah. All right. I'm serving it over the net to you, my friend. What's your first topic?
So we've talked a couple of times about AI and about ChatGPT. And I have gone down many rabbit holes, Doug, looking into this. And what I've gotten to learn is that people are making these connections, these add-ons. Keenan is looking at his control right now saying, "You idiots. You don't even know how to use the proper terminology." But there are these additional pieces of connections that people are making that go into ChatGPT that will work on websites and will work with technology. They're working on everything from Orbitz to Expedia to regular pieces of applications that will deeply, deeply automate the process. And they're incredible. So an example of that would be you go onto Expedia and it will take care of your search criteria for you. You give it certain information about what it is you want to do, how much you want to spend, and it will automate the decision making for you. And then it will tell you, while you're here, based on your likes and dislikes, how much you generally spend at dinner, here's a perfect restaurant for you while you're there. Like perfect for you and your spouse. You won't even argue about it. Like you and your wife can never decide where you want to have dinner. This is the one. And we'll make you a reservation. Here's the time you're there. We'll get your reservation at Wednesday. We know you guys usually like to eat at 6. Here you go. Just automate the hell out of it for you. So I put on LinkedIn not long ago, this AI is a perfect platform to try to attempt something that seemed unattemptable, which is classifying many things in the harmonized tariff code, which is a very difficult logic exercise where customs has given us a number of criteria to get us to, say, 6 digits and hopefully to some points to 10. There's a lot of information, all of it written down to help you with this logic process. And lo and behold, what we're reading more and more about is it's doing it. It's getting us there. And then beyond that, now this AI is filling in the entry. And then it's finding ways to figure out how to call people in order to, data-wise to do the pickup and setting appointments, contacting the driver, having the driver ready to pick up, detailing to the people in the warehouse when they should have that particular pallet ready. When you're picking it up and sending something to a warehouse, routing it in order to make sure it goes to the right airport for exports, getting its pallet position ready to go onto an aircraft, picking out which carrier it should go on in order for the proper cost, negotiating based on the type of negotiating window based on, Doug, I hate to say it, dude. This could honestly, and God, this is going to kill me to say it, Doug. I think the rise of the machines, it could do it, man. I mean, we might be looking at a robotic overlords being able to take over a great deal of the decision making involved in global freight forwarding. I'm not saying it's going to, but I'm saying that software of this type could be used to vastly automate and hasten the decision-making process of global freight forwarding, and if properly supervised, could take the place of people in many instances for more of the mundane, data-driven, data entry parts of our job, and could actually do some of the decision-making. What it won't be able to do yet is deal with it when things melt down. Maybe it could someday. I don't know, but this is terrifying to me, Doug. When it's making decisions better or at par with a customs house broker, that freaks me out, buddy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's it is a crazy time, and it's just kind of like the curve has just accelerated since like November, right? Is kind of when Chat GPT started getting some attention. And you're right, a lot of these tasks are going to be automated, and analyzing data to make the right decision, whole 100%. And I think we're going to see that accelerate tremendously in the next year. The application into our industry or any specific industry, I think, will be unique and determined, industry by industry. The one thing that gives me confidence, right, is there's still a heck of a lot of human interaction that needs to be done to keep things moving from A to B, right? Where is it positioned on the plane? What's the best routing? What's the best classification? All that is legit and very valid. But when the hits the fan and you need somebody to fix a problem, a computer and an AI bot can only do so much. So I think our industry is, while pieces of it that you just described will definitely be taken over, I think that there's always going to be a need for somebody to be either yelled at on the other side of the phone or figure out how the hell do you get it off that plane and last minute get it on something else to make the destination, because somebody that needs it on the other end, whether it's a surgery, medical, they could give two shits about an AI bot. They just need it there. And that's where a human can come in and save the day. So I think you're right on some aspects of our industry, but from a general perspective, I think you and I are still safe, at least in our lifetime.
I can't wait till there's two robots doing this show, Doug. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to halftime, brought to you by our great friends and sponsors at the Cap Logistics. To learn more about our wonderful sponsors, go to caplogistics.com. We thank them, as we always do, for their unflinching support of our madness every week, and we couldn't do it without them. So please do learn more about them at caplogistics.com. Doug, who's going first this week?
I'll jump in. Mine's pretty short and sweet, but I just saw a news article that said there is officially, I don't know when it goes from unofficial to official, but there is officially a tequila shortage in the United States of America. Do not panic. Do not panic. There's still tequila flowing. It's just a higher level. So basically there's an agave shortage, Pete. And I found out when I did a little research on this that agave plants take like 9-10 years, a decade to mature before they can be harvested. And with climate change, weather pattern changes, and primarily the fact that everybody likes to drink tequila now, it's kind of the cool drink, there's a huge shortage. So what's happening is that there's fillers and additives that people are throwing in there to dilute the consistency of the tequila or the potency or whatever. And then you're going to see a big chasm between top shelf tequilas and the Cuervo Gold that you and I used to dump into our trash can punch when we were in college. So anyway, keep an eye out. Tequila prices are going up. There is a shortage. Please do not panic. We'll get through this. Power to the people. But it is important to be aware, Pete. So tequila shortage, but don't freak out.
Not a big tequila guy, Doug, except in margaritas. I do like margaritas.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really drink them that much anymore. But like shooting tequila makes me retch. I don't know what it is. I'm as just about anybody who knows me knows, I drink brown liquor, and I'm a big fan of trashy cowboy bourbon. As much as I do like nice bourbon, I'm more often than not going to be found drinking real bourbon, the kind that men drank before it became trendy to drink bourbon.
Yeah.
I think it's hysterical that what really was just gas station trash whiskey up until about 20 years ago is now suddenly hip.
Yeah.
You and your silly mustache, you go ahead and keep at it. So I do see though a lot of younger people swilling tequila, and it makes me wonder who raised them. So
we'll
whatever,
see.
Dude.
Keep an eye out for that one. All right. I like your halftime because I have a personal experience with it in the last 48 hours. So let it rip.
Cool. Yeah. So on Apple Plus, there's a great new movie called Tetris. Did you see it yet, Doug?
I saw it 24 hours ago. Wednesday. What is today? Monday. I saw it Monday night. Or Sunday night. Sunday night. Yeah.
I thought it was great. And I really liked it. I thought it was great. And so there's a recommendation for everybody. I did like playing Tetris when it came out. For me, Tetris was a college thing. So everybody in college seemed to have a Game Boy. And where I went to college as freshmen, Game Boys were verboten. You were not allowed to have one because it was a military school. So we were only allowed to have a clock radio in our room, no television, no Game Boys, no anything. So you had to hide a Game Boy. And it was fun. It was fun to play. It was also nerve-wracking. It was very difficult to do. But it wasn't my favorite game. But recommendation-wise, everybody, do watch the movie. It's fabulous. It's not what you think. It's fabulous. And there's a lot of really cool 80s, what would you call it, like nostalgia throughout it. It's a lot of fun. But anyway, so for me, though, I was saying to my daughter the other day, we drove past the building where the Dream Factory was in Manchester. And the Dream Factory in Manchester was our arcade downtown. So I would go with my friend Sean and we would play arcade games, where one of the greatest feelings on earth, Doug, was walking in with a $10 roll of quarters. I felt like Donald Trump walking into the Dream Factory with $10 worth of quarters. 40 quarters? Are you kidding me? That was a lot of game time back in the day, right? I did have an Atari, so my 2600, so I did play games at home. I was not a PC gamer. I did not have a PC. But for me, my friend Sean and I would play Double Dragon together. It was like, a 2-player game where you go kick some gangster ass. We played Quartet a lot. But my favorite games that I would play by myself growing up, I loved Battlezone, which was a tank game. You put your eye in there and you drove your tank around blowing crap up. I was a big fan of that. I was also a monster fan of Asteroids, if you remember that from back in the 70s and 80s. I loved Asteroids. But the 2 games I played the most were Dig Dug. I absolutely loved Dig Dug, and I was a huge fan of Donkey Kong. So those were my 2 big games I played all the time. And as I got older, I also was a massive fan of Hang On, the motorcycle game. So those were the big games I played in the arcade game, Doug. So when I say that to my daughter now, she looks at me like, "What were you doing? What was this? You played games in the arcade?" And I've taken her to arcades before, It's just not the same for her. But I don't know, Doug, you and I are pretty close in age. I think we're almost the same age. What were your arcade games that you would go and play back in the day?
Yeah. So the two that come to mind is the sit-down version of Pac-Man and Mrs. Pac-Man, not the stand-up. It was at this.
Absolutely.
It was a pizza joint. I can't remember the name of it, but you'd work it, and then you'd put your pizza on the side. The whole thing was like glass, and then you're trying to play and eat, and the whole thing would just get all greased up. But it was Pac-Man and Mrs. Pac-Man, and then I think it was called Defender.
Where Defender was awesome.
Yeah, you just kind of went up and down, and all this stuff came at you, and so it was a little bit like Asteroids, but
harder.
It was harder. Stand-up Defender game and the sit-down Pac-Man that was covered with greasy pizza. Those were the two.
I don't see them that often anymore. You know, you don't see video games like you used to. The last video game I probably played a lot was Mortal Kombat. I would see Mortal Kombat around, and I used to love playing that. But now you'll see like Buck Hunter with the gun. You'll see that around, and the golfing one, Golden Tee. You'll see that around. But that's about it, you know. So I'll go to Dave and Buster's with my daughter sometimes, and those games are all right, but it's just not the same. I just loved it when I was a teenager because I am a comic book reading, Dungeons and Dragon playing dork. I loved going to the arcade. But yeah, my Atari, I love my Atari games too, but it was nothing like going to the Dream Factory.
Yeah, it was. So anyway, man, hey, we're going to take your second topic and we're going to focus more on that one, because I just realized my second topic is similar to your first topic, which is all about AI. I was talking about it. So mine was specific in my industry with warehousing. I think that there's the robotics and the things that are coming around. So I'm not going to go into the whole AI and all that kind of stuff. But what's going to happen, Pete, is kind of what we saw in electric vehicles as far as commercial and driverless technology. That was hip and cool, and it was like a flash in the pan, right? And like Nikola came out of nowhere. They had $1 billion valuation, and they had made 0 trucks, right? And then the guy got into trouble with the law and the whole bit, and I think he's in jail or going to be in jail or something like that. So I think my prediction is that there's going to be a similar explosion of AI technology and investments, acquisitions, and propping up some pretty cool technology. But we need to be careful of who are posers, so to speak, and who is going to come through, because there's going to be companies that kind of have a product, kind of don't, that they can market the hell out of it. Somebody could buy them, unicorn the valuation, and then maybe fall back to earth. So it's coming. You spoke about it with data. I'm speaking about it with moving boxes through a warehouse. But the key point here is there's going to be investment. There's going to be some cool stuff coming out there. But be careful and be aware, because some of that is really not going to materialize. And I think we'll see some companies out there that are a flash in the pan and may have some funny business behind them, where there may be some I don't know, corruption. Maybe is too aggressive of a word, but just be forewarned when you see everybody running to the well to try to get their take on AI and robotics and moving product in a warehouse.
I think that's going to be representative of all industry, Doug, with regards to robotics and AI. I don't care if it's soft serve ice cream or sending rockets to the moon. Everyone is going to try to make a foray into it. They're going to try to get investment, make some money off of it, and then sell it into a bigger enterprise. And because logistics is so tied into everything, particularly e-commerce, there's going to be so much grift. It's going to be embarrassing.
Yeah.
And so many companies are looking right now to shave seconds off of what's happening. There's going to be opportunities for people to take a shot at it. Yeah. You know, I still have my, I have a couple of MP3 players hanging around in my desk at home from companies like iRiver and, that didn't make it. They didn't make it. They were perfectly good technology, but they didn't make it because Apple came in there like the 500-ton gorilla and just stomped on their heads.
Yeah.
So great ideas, it just didn't make it, but their technology ended up in other things. So there'll be a lot of it. See, you weren't even going to do a topic, and you just did, Doug.
I know. That's how good we are, Pete. We can just pivot.
Good. How good we are, bro. Yeah.
We just kind of pivoted. So, but hey, your last topic touches every single person in the entire country. So I think it's important to end with this.
Dude, I got to pull it up because I didn't realize how big these numbers were. Like, I didn't think they were real. So a couple of weeks ago, you talked about a possible UPS strike and FedEx, how FedEx was going out there saying, hey, listen, you might want to negotiate rates now, get in now, because if UPS goes on strike, don't come crying to me. You know, you want to get in now because the people that come to us now and work it out with us now, they're going to get special treatment. And if UPS goes on strike and you come to us then, you may be at the back of the queue. You know, I'm like, we had a conversation about it, you know.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of articles that came out between yesterday and today where Sean O'Brien, who apparently is the president of the Teamsters, was in Boston over the weekend, just stirring the pot, man. Like, just stirring the pot. Like, you know, when COVID hit, we were essential. When COVID was around and everybody needed their stuff, we had to be here for you. People were working 12, 16-hour days, 7 days a week. We didn't get a raise. And when we asked for help, you guys said, listen, the world's in crisis and you're under a contract. And we did what we had to do. Time to pay. Don't think that we're above striking, you know. And he's just like stirring it up. And 340,000 employees, Doug, in the drivers and package. I had absolutely no idea there were that many people. And so he said, don't think that we're afraid to strike. Don't think that don't think that it would bother us to strike. And then you start reading the article and people like, we're preparing as an organization to not work in order to get what we're owed based off of what happened to us during COVID, when we put our lives at danger, we put our families' lives at danger, and nobody cared about us or gave any consideration to us. Like, you read this, you're like, whoa, you know? Mm-hmm. And I had absolutely no idea, Doug, there were that many people that were engaged in this, first of all. And then second of all, you start to think about what FedEx said earlier with that, don't come crying to us looking for help because we gave you that chance. And now that half of the world's, well, a third, because I know you hate counting them, but Postal Service, when a third of the country's small package services are disrupted because of a labor negotiation, FedEx is going to be there like, well, are you on the list? Because you're not getting the club if you're not on the list. It's going to be insane, man. It's going to be insane.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, nothing like a guy named Sean O'Brien stirring the pot in Boston, Massachusetts,
was it Sean? Right? Yeah. That's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect.
Is. I love it. When you said that, I'm like, there couldn't have been. And I heard that he was playing, "Sympathy for the Devil" from the Stones to get the audience. So it couldn't have been, a better perspective. The one thing on the one specific thing that popped out of me is that the whole personal vehicle drivers, like when things were getting nutty and there were so many packages during COVID, they, kind of like the Amazon model, just show up, throw a bunch of crap in your car and just make some deliveries and keep it going. That's a big challenge because those are not union. And where do they fit in the equation? Because it didn't go away. It's smaller than it used to be, but that's still kind of what do you do about this group over here because they're a necessary evil? But yeah, this will be fun. And you know what? A guy named Sean O'Brien who lives in Boston, there's going to be a lot of creative stuff going on. And it will make headlines because there'll be some funny rallies, some funny comments, and they ain't backing down. That's not what an Irishman from Boston does. So look out.
Think about the longshoreman situation right now. We're in April. And from what I've been reading, they're nowhere close to a decision. You don't think these guys are going to, they're going to be white knuckling it. They're holding on. They're going to make sure that this thing, they get what they want. So we could be in a situation where we're in negotiations for months on the small package deal where everyone's kind of worried about what happens next with UPS. While we're still worried about a West Coast port strike. You have inflated rates on the East Coast with ocean freight. It could be ugly. It could be really, really ugly, man, with regards to labor and transportation in this country. And that could keep inflated rates on various types of transportation costs because of labor concerns.
Yeah.
This thing just doesn't end, man. It just doesn't end.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays.
Yeah.
So I think that's it, buddy. You got to get back to business in Whippany, New Jersey. So
God bless Whippany. Never underestimate the drawing power of the Garden State, my friend.
That's right. Now, I won't even go. Anyway, we're going to wrap this show up, but I got some Jersey talk because I was out there a couple weeks ago. But first and foremost, I want to thank Cap Logistics for giving us the platform to get out and basically talk about whatever we want to talk about, Pete. That's the beauty of the show. And I love doing it with you. And I think our audience enjoys it. And we really appreciate them listening. So caplogistics.com, take a look at their website for the services they support. Thank you for listening to the show. And Pete, thanks for coming and bringing the heat in Whippany, New Jersey.
Thank you, buddy. I'll see you next week.
All right. See you, everybody. Thanks.
Bye-bye.